Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Lasat Pankaja Kinchalka Pita Kausheya Vas Savam Pita Kausheya Vas Sasam Srivatsa Vakshasam Brajat Kaustu Bhamuka Kanharam Tasmat Pankajat Kinjalka Pita Kausheya Vasasam Srivatsa Vakshasam Brajat Kaustubha Mukta Kandaram. Word for word. Lasat, shining. Pankaja, of a lotus. Kinjalka, filaments. Pita, yellow. Kaushaya, silk cloth. Vasasam, whose garment. Srivatsa, bearing the mark of Srivatsa. Vakshasam, breast. Rajat, brilliant. Kaustuba, Kaustuba gem. Amukta, put on. Kandaram, his neck. Translation. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breast he bears the mark of Srivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustuba gem is suspended from his neck. Hare Krishna, everybody at home. Nice to see you. We're here in North Carolina. We were at the Sadhu Sangha retreat in Boone, North Carolina, which is up in the mountains. Now we're in Charlotte, which turns out to be one of the largest cities in America. I had no idea. Charlotte is home to Wells Fargo Bank and a number of other large industrial enterprises, including Duke Energy. And it is 23rd in size in North America. The downtown metropolitan area claims over 2 million people, 2.3 million people inhabit the metropolitan area of Charlotte, North Carolina. And the weather's not so bad here. So people are migrating to Charlotte, North Carolina at an alarming rate, which is good for us because we're just starting a Sankirtan program in earnest here under the watchful guide of Aditya Narayan Prabhu, the mastermind of Sankirtan in North Carolina. There's a great team here. We had a meeting last night, and they plan to become one of the premier book distributing centers in North America and then the world. First North America, then the world. What we're doing now is wrangling with all the technology, because there's a group of devotees online, on the phone, a conference call that I'm supposed to be talking to right now about a Bhagavatam verse, and they're trying to get the sound right. So, a couple of realizations from the Sadhu Sangha retreat. Can you close that door, please? And that is that when one intentionally chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra with no other distractions, the experience is transformational. And one can try this at any time. In fact, the process of chanting japa is meant to give exclusive attention to the holy name. And that's all that's required to advance in spiritual life, is to simply give exclusive attention to the holy name. That seems like it should be relatively simple. However, the mind creates many artificial demands. As Krishna says in the Gita, prajahati yada kama sarvan partha manogatan, that a self-realized person gives up those artificial demands of the mind and Atmaneva Atmana Tushta, finds satisfaction in the self. And so the process of Krishna consciousness is profound. And now we're back, apparently, live with the conference call group. Can you hear me? I'm speaking especially to those on the phone. Conference call.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, we can hear you now. Thank you, Maharaj.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Maharaj, we can hear you.
How about now?
We can hear you, but still voice is calm.
Okay. That's all right. Have a seat. We'll suffer any inconvenience to broadcast the Bhagavatam. And not much of an inconvenience. This is... Anyway. So, we read the verse, and I'll repeat it because there's been a huge gap of time between the last time I read it and now. The verse says, and it's describing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan. His loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus. On his breast he bears the mark of Srivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustuba gem is suspended from his neck. Purport: the exact color of the garment of the Supreme Lord is described as saffron yellow, just like the pollen of a lotus flower. The Kaustuba gem hanging on his chest is also described. His neck is beautifully decorated with jewels and pearls. The Lord is full in 6 opulences, one of which is his wealth. He is very richly dressed with valuable jewels, which are not visible within this material world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. in a meeting Srila Prabhupada had with a famous American yogi, and I won't mention his name right now, but this yogi was holding a conference somewhere in North America. And he came to invite Prabhupada. The conversation takes place in Honolulu, Hawaii. Prabhupada spent a lot of time there translating. And the yogi came and he told Prabhupada that he was inviting people from many different yoga groups to come to this conference. And he named several people who were well-known Mayavadis. And he said, we will come together, we will be together, we will merge together. And Prabhupada said, they will never. And he said, you can write it in your book, because the yogi had an assistant there who was taking notes, that this will never be successful. And this was not simply being unreasonably sectarian, but Prabhupada went on to explain why he said that in the conversation. Because the topic came up again and again, and Prabhupada pressed the issue. Who is God? And the yogi's opinion was that everyone was free to think of God in any way they wanted. And Prabhupada said, that's fine, but what will they think of? Please give me the details. And Prabhupada said, in the Gita, Krishna says, Manmana Bhava Bhakto, think of me. So, what is one to think of? One has to have something specific to think of. The mind cannot hold to a impersonal image. And that's actually contradiction in terms. There's no such thing as an impersonal image. And that's the problem, because the mind wants detail. In fine art, we find that the detail is captivating to the mind. As I've mentioned millions of times, there's a shop in Palo Alto, California called Infinite Beauty. And the idea is that you'll go in there, you'll get the right cosmetics, and you'll be infinitely beautiful. Forever flawless. Forever flawless. And so that doesn't quite work out, but everyone likes to live in that illusion that they'll be forever flawless, because one wants to avoid serving the person who is actually forever flawless. So this dose of description of the features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's very powerful medicine. And sometimes with powerful medicine, a person who has an acute disease, the body will even react to the medicine very strongly. So materialistic people who get the Srimad Bhagavatam may at first think, who is this person everyone's talking about? Because they have a misconception that I'm a materialistic person, I have a fallible body, and everybody knows it, try to cover it up. But if there's a supreme person, he must also have a fallible body too, because bodies must be fallible. And there's this illogical conclusion that people come to, that because the material world is a limited and temporary place, therefore the spiritual world must be impersonal. This is the conclusion that one can come to through logic. And that's as far as one can go through logic. Therefore, one needs to have this information, which is aparushaya, which comes from a divine source, which actually gives axiomatic truth and detailed, correct information about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, the last verse of the 15th chapter, Krishna says that he describes the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because that chapter is about Purushottam Yoga. He said this is imperishable science. And in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that one must overcome weakness of heart in order to advance in devotional service. And then he says that by reading the first 6 verses in the chapter 15, one can learn how to overcome weakness of heart. So one's left to understand what that means by reading the first 6 verses of the 15th chapter. And in those verses, Krishna describes, first of all, how the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. He says that Urdvamula Shakam Ashvatam Avyayam Chandasi Yasaparnani Yastam Veda Sabeda Ved Adashturvam Ashritastasya Shaka Guna Pravida Shaya Pravala Adashtamulan Anusantadani Karmanubanini Manusha Loke Narupamaseya Tatopalabhyate Nanto Nachagir Nachasampratishta Ashvatamenam Sivaruda Bulam Asham Shashena Trigena Chitra Tatakpadam Tap Parimarkitavyam Yasmin Katana Nivatati Guya Tameva Chadyam Purusham Prapadye Yatak Pariti Prashita Purani Nimana Moha Jita Sangatosha Adyama Nitya Vinivritta Kama Tvangarva Mukta Sukatuka Sonja Kachancha Buddha Para Avyayam Tat. So in these verses, Krishna says that the material world is a banyan tree. It has roots upward and its branches down, whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. And he goes on to describe how just as a tree on a lake gets reflected, similarly this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. And then he says, living entities get entangled in this reflection, which it compares to this gigantic banyan tree. And they can't see the beginning, they can't see the end, they can't see where they are, and they can't understand, they don't have any perspective to understand that it's temporary. They simply go into the illusion, trying to make the best of it. So then Krishna says, Asanga shastrena dridena chitva, you have to cut down this deeply rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. So, as we were reading yesterday in the first canto, 6th chapter of the Bhagavatam, Narada says that it's somewhat possible to restrain the senses through the yoga process. But when one does that through mechanical means, the senses will always come back, they'll prevail. And in the purport to that, the verse we were reading, Prabhupada says that there are great yogis like Vishwamitra who practiced yoga for thousands of years, very successfully, but then who again became attracted to the material world. In fact, Vishwamitra became attracted to Menaka, and he didn't even see her. All that happened was he heard her ankle bells, and there was some impression still left in his heart to try to enjoy the material world. So when he heard the ankle bells, his meditation broke and he ran off with Menaka. And so much for all his yogic restraint. However, Prabhupada then points out that Haridas Thakur, because he had a different kind of detachment, one that was based on attachment to Krishna. He was positively engaged with taste in experiencing Krishna's qualities, which are all present within the holy name. We know that the Bhagavatam, Padma Purana says that Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shruto Nityamukto Binatvam Nama Namino. That the holy name of Krishna has all the qualities of Krishna, the qualities that we're hearing about in the verse today, the very specific qualities, the way he dresses, the specific markings he has, and so forth, are all there present within the holy name, completely. And when one chants the holy name with devotion, the holy name reveals these qualities to the devotee, and the devotee's mind actually becomes absorbed in this positive aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is the real detachment from matter and from the details of the material world that capture the mind. People are interested in details, that's why they look at Facebook. They look at Facebook and then it's like, here's a detail, here's another detail, here's another detail. And they want some rasa from it also. Because, if somebody gets their head chopped off, they put it on Facebook, and it's like, wow, look at that, 1 million hits. Somebody got their head chopped off, let's look at that. And the news, if the news every day came out and it just said, same as it was yesterday, nothing really happened today, they wouldn't sell any newspapers. If you read a novel and it said, today, same thing happens yesterday, it was about the same, nothing really changed, everything's about the same, equal, everything's same, you just throw that novel to the side. You want some drama, you want some, at the end of the chapter, you go, what's going to happen next? The mind needs this detail in it, detailed information, details of qualities and so forth. And so, when one actually gets the real details from the spiritual world, not something that's based on description of the material elements, the changing material elements, and is able to hear that and assimilate it, then the mind becomes positively attracted, and naturally one becomes detached from the material details. They become uninteresting. And this is the principle of a higher taste that Krishna mentions in the Gita. Vishaya vinivartante nivaharasya tehina asavarjam rasopyasya param jashva nivartate. That one may restrain the senses by force. but still there's a taste. The senses still want to go there, even though you're holding it back. But when one gets a higher taste, then there's no longer an inclination to go for the lower taste. So this is what Prabhupada meant by overcoming weakness of heart. Weakness of heart he describes as a desire to enjoy matter, which is really stupid, because we have nothing to do with the material world. It's a complete fake out. It's just a reflection, and running after it is compared to barking up the wrong tree. The hunting dog goes out into the field, and the bird flies out of the bush, flies into a tree, and the dog goes to the wrong tree and starts barking wildly at that tree where there's no bird. Because see, the bird dogs, they go with the hunter and they need to flush out the birds. And then the bird flies up, and the hunter finds it because the dog's barking at it. And even they have the dogs, they're trained so their tail points straight when they find the bird. And they bark, bark, bark. So when the bird flies up, it goes into one tree, and the dog goes to the wrong tree. And his tail's pointing, and he's barking at that tree. Bark, bark, bark. But there's no bird. So in the same way, there's this saying, barking up the wrong tree. And that is, in fact, I saw recently somebody wrote a book called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. Because people understand that they're not getting what they want here in the material world. So, in the same way, taking in all the detailed explanations in the material world, trying to find some happiness through these details, is barking up the wrong tree. There's actually nothing there for the soul. But one who is graced by the descriptions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead then can fix his or her mind on that form of the Supreme Lord. And also take up positive engagement by chanting Hare Krishna, which uses the senses to produce the sound, to hear the sound, and the sound is no different from that form. And therefore, in the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni says in the 5th chapter of the 1st canto that the iti murtyabhidanena mantra murtam amurtikam yatite yagya purusha sasamyak darshanam puman. And that is that the complete form of the Lord can be known to a person, can be revealed through the mantra. Iti murtyabhidanena mantra murtim amurtikam. And in this verse, the word amurtikam, the word murti means form, and it also means difficulty. And when you say amurtikam, it means without difficulty. So the form of the Lord, all the description we're hearing today, can be known, Narada Muni says, through the process of chanting. Iti murtyabhidanena mantra murtim amurtikam. The murti is amurtikam. It's easily revealed through the mantra. And then he goes on to say that it's the full darshan of the Lord, not partial. It's not some representation, but it's actually directly. Iti murtyabhidanena mantra murtim amurtikam yajite yagya purusham. Through this sacrifice of chanting, sa samyak darshanam puman. So samyak, the complete darshan, is available by this process of chanting. It's easily available. So there's a practical aspect to Bhakti Yoga by hearing about the form of the Lord and chanting His name. And this is the way in which one becomes fully detached from the material world. And Rupa Goswami, in the Padyavali, gives several verses that describe this way in which one becomes detached from the material world. So he says, Yuvatinam yata yuni, yunam chau yuvatau yata, manobhiravate tadva, maname ramatam tvai. And that is, just as the minds of young men become attracted to young women, and young men, the minds of young women become attracted to young men, spontaneously. So similarly, let my mind be attracted to you, Krishna. The same way. the devotees who are taking a bus tour of young men and women, devotees, to the Grand Canyon, said they pulled up at the Grand Canyon and the devotees got out and they didn't even notice the Grand Canyon because they were too busy, the men and women were too busy talking to one another. And then they said, hey, there's a Grand Canyon. Oh, how interesting, there it is. So there's this very powerful way of attraction in the material world we can understand. Prabhupada describes how this comes from the spiritual world. It's called Adiras. There's this original attraction between Radha and Krishna. And in Goloka Vrindavan, everyone's attracted to Radha and Krishna. Everything about them, all the details of their life. Just like in the material world, people like to listen to soap operas, watch soap operas on television. I don't know if they have them in India, but in America they're very famous. For years, maybe it's still on, there was a program called General Hospital. It was so famous, people just called it GH, General Hospital. People would watch that show every day, they'd follow it for years. There was no housewives who would stay home, that was their whole life. The drama that was unfolding in this one hospital between the doctors, the nurses, the attendants, the patients, and everything like that. They were having all these life dramas, love affairs, and breaking up, and all these kinds of things. Because this is natural. It's the Adi Ras. It's what happens in the spiritual world, only it's all centered around Radha and Krishna. What did they do today? What happened last night? Who said what to whom? Who got in the middle of the whole thing? There's intense drama at every second. And all the details are there available. It gets talked about all over town. And everyone's fully absorbed in thinking about Radha Krishna. And the attraction is natural. It's the original attraction that we have, the original taste that we have. But when I get contact with the material world, I get covered up by 3 modes of material nature. And I try to experience that same rasa, it's the same kind of interaction, but through the modes of material nature. And that is through other living beings who are actually, as Rukmini points out to Krishna. Because Krishna, at one point, he told Rukmini, he said, why'd you marry me anyway? He said, nobody even knows where I come from. Like, I came from this little cow herding thing, and now I'm supposed to be a Kshatriya, and no one really knows what I am. You really should have married Shishupal. I mean, what's the thing with me? And he was going on and on about all this disqualification. He said, we should really just, you should just leave me. And when Rukmini heard all these things, she became so distraught that she fainted, because she's so attached to Krishna. And when Krishna revived her, he was surprised and worried that she had fainted, but delighted by her devotion. And partly the reason he brought it up was just to see that in her. And when he revived her, she became a little forceful in her speech, and she started contradicting all the things that Krishna said about his disqualification. She turned it into qualification. So then, in one of her statements, she said that, why would I marry anybody else but you? She said, women marry a man in the material world, and what is he anyway? It's just a bag full of mucus, blood, stool, mustache, hair. I mean, you get this image she's bringing up coming from Rukmini. This bag, and you throw in all this gross stuff, and you say, and foul smells come from this body and thing. But women become attracted to a man like that. But actually, that's all it is, she said. But you, on the other hand, your body is transcendental. You have an eternal form. What is it? Infinite beauty? Flawless. I don't know, I got infinite beauty in my mind. I think it's flawless forever. Krishna is actually flawless forever, and Rukmini points this out. Actually, you're flawless forever. And one can experience this through the process of bhakti. One has to experience it through the process of bhakti to transfer one's natural attraction that has become misguided in the material world back to Krishna and begin to invest oneself in that. Rupa Goswami also writes in one of his verses in the Padyavali about how a lover is waiting for a letter from his lover. And while he's waiting every day, he's checking to see, did it come, did it come, did it come? And when the letter finally comes, his hands are trembling while he's opening it. And then he's reading it, and tears are coming, his voice is faltering while he's reading a letter from his lover. So this, anyone can relate to, and you can see in dramas all over the world that the same theme comes up again and again. Does she love me? She loves me, she loves me not. And all this kind of intrigue. He said, so in the same way, please let me have the same emotion when I read the Bhagavatam. That the Bhagavatam is this love letter from the spiritual world describing these relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So let my hands tremble when I read the Bhagavatam. Let tears come from my eyes while I'm reading. Mahaprabhu's copy of the Bhagavatam became useless because he cried so much while he was reading it that all the printing just washed off the page, disintegrated. So the Vaishnavas, they find this actual rasa in the details of Krishna's form. And therefore Prabhupada gave Krishna book very quickly. When he came to America, he had already had 2 heart attacks on the ship coming over. He wasn't sure how long he would survive. And therefore, he suspended his translation of the Bhagavatam because he wanted that the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam be presented to the world. And so he did it in summary form, as quickly as possible, so that it would come out, because he knew that people had to hear about Krishna's spiritual, but not only hear, they also had to see. And therefore, in the first printing of the Krishna book, he assembled artists. And he wanted 52 color prints, pictures of Krishna's divine pastimes with very specific imagery of Krishna and his devotees from the spiritual world. The artists at that time were not very qualified, and they also knew they weren't very qualified. And they were aghast when Prabhupada asked them to read this transcript of the Krishna book and to make these pictures of the Supreme and his devotees. And they said, Prabhupada, we can't possibly do justice to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with our meager talents, with our non-existent talents. How can we do this? And Prabhupada said, you sit down in front of the canvas and you pray and you do it. He wanted it right away because he knew it had to come out to the world. So the artists sat down and they began to produce these paintings. Now, of course, they kept coming to Prabhupada and asking him questions. How does it look? For instance, the prayers personified Vedas. They had no idea what a personified Veda looked like. They thought it was a book with arms or something like that. What is it? So they came to Prabhupada and they asked him, what is a personified Veda? Prabhupada described it. Also, when they were, Jadharani, one of the famous artists at that time, was painting a picture of Krishna, and in Vrindavan, he was like, well, how does he wear his dhoti? So Prabhupada said, I'll show you. And he took one of his dhotis and he tied it in a special way, and he posed. And she was able to make a sketch of that and then paint it. Everything, the artist would come and they'd ask Prabhupada, well, what about this? What does he look like? What is it? Just like this, just like that. Prabhupada would describe it. Because that has to be, one has to have that information. One has to hear it, one has to see it. This was Prabhupada's genius to put these pictures in the book, because he knew that people would only be able to be delivered from the material world unless they had sufficient information about Krishna and the spiritual world. They had to have all the details of that. And practically, because people are so covered over, he said in his poem on the Jaladuta, that he was praying to Krishna, how will they get this taste to hear about these details of Krishna? So he also included the paintings to make sure that they were captured. And I don't know about you, but the first time I saw Prabhupada's books, I used to just go through the paintings every day. I just look at each one and read the caption underneath. I look at them again and again. Wow, look at that. In fact, the first Back to Godhead magazine that I got, this was when the drought was over. I was in a severe spiritual drought because although I was so thirsty for spiritual knowledge, all I was getting was this vague information from all the books I was reading. I tried to get as many spiritual books as I could. I had them lined up on my shelf and I was reading them. But not enough detail. Even the little copy of Bhagavad Gita I had, it only had translations. And they were done by a person who wasn't a Vaishnava. So it wasn't complete. But then when I got the Back to Godhead magazine, that was like the rain started pouring down. The information from the spiritual world, exact information of what the Supreme Lord looks like. And I can remember turning the page and there was an advertisement there for the Sri Upanishad. And it said, the ancient Vedas of India say that God is a person. In fact, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And my jaw dropped to the floor. I thought, someone actually came out and said it. What I was thinking the whole time, because in these prayers that the Mayavadis offer, they say, pray. Who are you praying to? Yourself. And I thought, how does that make sense? That I'm making prayers, sincere prayers, but I'm God? How am I praying to myself? It was counterintuitive. But in this it said, God is actually a person. He's the Supreme Personality of God. And there was a tiny picture of the cover of Sri Upanishad. And I said, I have to go get that book. So I went to Shambhala Books in Berkeley, California, and asked them, do you have anything by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada? And they had the Sri Upanishad and the Bhagavad Gita in a book called On the Way to Krishna. And there the pictures, all the details were there. So that was Prabhupada's genius. He brought out the 52 color plates showing Krishna in the spiritual world with all these details. Of course, today's verse is about Lord Narayan, but Krishna has he wears a beautiful saffron-colored cloth. He wears a peacock feather in his hair. He has the Shrivats on his chest, Kashtubha gem, and all these kinds of things. And this information, that's the most valuable information. It can captivate the mind, make one indifferent to all the details, the useless details that flow through the airwaves in the material world, and situate one perfectly in yoga by understanding the details of the Lord. In another section of the Bhagavatam, there is a description of the lotus feet of Krishna. And there it tells about different markings on the lotus feet of Krishna. What are some of those markings? Thunderbolt, lotus, flag, barleycorn. And you think about this. What's on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and all these things? What's it about? What does it mean? Infinitely deep, the meaning. But one I'll talk about that's mentioned in the Bhagavatam is the thunderbolt. So the yogis, the Bhagavatam says, they meditate on Lord Krishna's lotus feet and they think of that thunderbolt. Because that one thunderbolt, thinking of a thunderbolt on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, can smash mountains of sin that one has accumulated over many, many lifetimes. Huge Himalayan mountain of sin. And the thunderbolt comes down, smash, and just smashes it. This is the power of actually having some detail to focus on about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's an injustice to the world to present God without this. This is why in the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni criticizes Vyasadeva, his disciple. And he tells him, Naishkarmyam apyachutabhava varjitam, nashobhate jnanam alam niranjanam, kutak punashashvada bhadram ishvade, nacharpitam karma yadapyakarnam. He says, if you present the idea of the Supreme and the ultimate truth, but you don't give a description of Achyuta, you don't have these details. He said, Nashobhate, it's not very nice. It's not beautiful at all. It's not appealing. Nashobhate jnanam alam niranjanam. Even if you presented complete detachment from the material world, Naishkarmyam, how to work in the world without being attached to the fruits of your result, you're completely detached. Soham. But if you don't have this, if you don't have Achyuta Bhava, That means some emotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead based on accurate information about him. So then you don't have anything. He said, what to speak then of people who are fully absorbed in the illusory energy of the Lord? That's just plain stupidity. Because it's suffering while you're doing it, and when you get the fruit of your work in the material world, it's even more suffering. So the only answer to the problems that one experiences in the material world is to hear from the right source, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam, about the details of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I can remember when I first joined the temple, I was so accustomed to the impersonal conception of the Supreme that I came to the altar where Sri Sri Radha Gokula and Ananda were situated so beautifully. And they had huge flower arrangements around the deities. And I used to meditate on the flowers because my mind could not accommodate the form of the Lord yet. It just was not possible. It takes some time to actually accommodate this. And I remember hearing the Bhagavatam. I could read the Gita again and again, but the Bhagavatam was very hard to penetrate because I was thinking, who are all these people? Why all these details? And then in one class, it was being given by the temple president at the time, Bhutama Prabhu. And it was a section of the first canto of the Bhagavatam where Krishna is interacting with the queens of Dwarka. And the verse said that these queens could not quit those lotus feet. And I was saying, can't quit those lotus feet? What does that mean? And somehow that phrase stuck in my mind. One phrase from the Bhagavatam. I thought his feet were so sweet, they couldn't quit those lotus feet. And all day long I was going around doing my chores, mopping floors, and thinking, I can't quit those lotus feet. And it became like, all of a sudden, that one verse of the Bhagavatam, it transformed me. And I started thinking, God has lotus feet. He's a person. It was although there were many breakthroughs on the path coming to Krishna consciousness, that was a noticeable one where I thought I was confronted with actually the details of the Lord's form. And so I know for myself how transformational the Bhagavatam is in the process of Krishna consciousness. It's the complete way in which one can become detached from the material world, just like a yogi who controls his senses, but one can do it for real by actually developing an affection for the personal form of the Lord. And that's also why it's important to be engaged in Panchakshik Vidhi. One has to be able to touch the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When you see the brass deity of Krishna, his lotus feet are painted reddish or pinkish, and his lotus palm, and you can actually smear oil on the body of the Lord before you bathe him. And then when you pour water or milk or honey, it glides down the form of the Lord. You can put clothes on him. I mean, it's so cool dressing Krishna, because then you start thinking about all the details, how you're going to hold wardrobes for him. And then all the propensities for thinking about how to dress oneself go out the window. You can just put on the same thing every day and not worry about it if you're dressing Krishna, because that way you feel completely satisfied. And this is something that Prahlad brings up in the prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. He says that the living entities are little samples of God. And when they offer something to God, they themselves become decorated. Just like when you decorate your face, the image in the mirror is also decorated. So in a similar way, when we decorate the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we feel decorated. We're happy to wear one color every day, one style, anything like that. It doesn't even matter, we don't even care. Just as long as Krishna gets decorated with all these things, as long as we get to see the form of Krishna. But if you don't see the form of Krishna, you don't have the form of Krishna to dress and appreciate, then you have to go to the mall. And you have to spend millions of dollars. And every time you buy a shirt or a new dress or something like that in the store, it looks okay, and you bring it home, you go, nah, I still don't look right. And I know people, I've seen it, I've been to their homes, and they have closets full of clothes, dress, and they still have the tags on them. And they never wear them, or they wear them once and then they get tired of it, or they think, oh, I look a little dumpy in this thing, I can't do it. You'll never be satisfied with trying to dress yourself. That's even successful entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs knew that. He just wore the same turtleneck every day so he could concentrate on building an empire, not be internally focused. But the devotees do it in the real way. They actually channel that propensity by dressing Krishna. I've seen some devotees, little Gorni Taipidis, one of my godbrothers had. He used to go into Hong Kong and buy the most precious jewels and make these little outfits, with jewels and everything. They have these gold Brahmin threads. And if you have propensity for collecting expensive things, you can collect all these things for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, it's not recommended in Kali Yuga because people will steal them. So this verse today gives us an inkling into the real philosophy of God consciousness, which culminates in choice descriptions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's bodily form, his activities, and therefore one should read Krishna book, one should look at the pictures, one should hear Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly, and go on chanting Hare Krishna every day until one has a positive attraction. And you can tell when you have a positive attraction because your attraction to listening to the news of the material world will completely evaporate. And your attraction for looking at the forms of them in the material world will become well adjusted, and you'll just see that these are biological robots moving around. But the real form is that which exists in the spiritual world, the spiritual form. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. Now, Mataji, do you take any questions or comments? Or does everyone have to run off to work now? Time's up?
No, we have time for questions.
Okay. So if we hear anything from you in the next, say, 28 seconds, then we'll try for a question or two. Or reflection in something that you heard that's stuck. And if we don't...
Yes, Maharaj. Now we will unmute everybody and they can ask questions. Thank you.
All callers are unmuted. All callers are muted and they can unmute themselves.
Okay, if you have a question or reflection, unmute yourself, please. Go right ahead. Okay, we have one here in the live studio, our live studio audience.
Maharaj, thank you so much for the beautiful class. So, in the process of Bhakti Yoga, we have to develop an attachment to the Lord. And sometimes I find that that attachment to the Lord is taking a long time. And even though chanting and other devotional activities are going on, still the attraction to the material world is there. So, can you help me how to solve this?
Yeah, that's why George Harrison sang in that song, I really want to see you, Lord. I really want to be with you, Lord. But it takes so long, my Lord. Hare Krishna. Yeah, it takes so long. But you have to, well, you can read the story in the first canto, 6th chapter of the Bhagavatam. You get some solace because it points out how Narada Muni had received initiation and in the process of bhakti, and then his mother died, so he left home. He went off on his own. He was practicing in a forest, and Krishna was pleased with his sincerity, so he revealed himself. He doesn't have to reveal himself, but he did because he was pleased with sincerity. And Narada became fully aware of the form of the Lord, and his senses, each one of them became spiritually enlivened and wanted to serve the Lord in their own way. And then he lost it. And then he tried to mechanically get it back, but he couldn't. And then the Lord spoke to him just to appease him. He couldn't see him, but he could hear the voice. And the Lord said that, unfortunately, you're not perfect in yoga yet. You're simply practicing. And and you won't be able to see me again in this life. But he gave him that sample. So everyone who's come to Krishna consciousness, I dare say, has received some sample that Krishna has revealed. And we have to remember that again and again. We have to also rely on the descriptions of Krishna and the process of advancement and devotional service from others to understand that it's inevitable that we will come to the perfect stage. In fact, Prabhupada mentions in the light of the Bhagavatam that just as people come together to practice the Chaturmasya, they'll sit in one room and perform austerities for the 4 months of the rainy season. They don't realize the results of those austerities until they leave the room. And they go out into the world and they go, oh, I see what I did. It's all different. So he said in a similar way, our lifetime is a Chaturmasya-like existence. And as we're practicing devotional service, we may not experience the full results in this lifetime, but when you leave the body, then you'll fully experience the result of all your austerities. And one other point is that we should also become attached to the devotees of the Lord and our relationships with them. And when you become attached to Vaishnavas, it's actually the way in which one approaches Krishna in the best way. In fact, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, before you see Krishna, you'll see the Vaishnavas. Just as before you see the sunrise in the morning, you'll see the glow. The sunrise is coming, but the sun hasn't appeared yet. So when you meet Vaishnavas, you become attached to Vaishnavas, you learn how to serve Vaishnavas and love them very much, then you can know for certain that you'll see Krishna very soon. And also, one should try to get a taste. If one's not getting a taste, one should adjust one's practice. Consider, am I making some offense? Am I not hearing and chanting enough? Am I hearing and chanting with attention? Am I taking time out to actually go deeply within the practice? And there are various times when you can go deeply within the practice. In a day, you can go deeply within the practice, especially during the Brahma Muhurta. In the month, you can go deeply within the practice during Ekadashi. Within a year, you can go deeply within the practice during Kartik. Within your lifetime, you can deeply go within the practice near the end of your life, which of course can be at any time. But especially as you get older, you should take it much more seriously. Every second counts. And of course, one could do it any time, but there's opportunities. And now we just had a festival like the Sadhu Sangha retreat. And if you can take full advantage of these kinds of opportunities, then you get an extra downpour of water that you can draw upon in your daily life. Another question or comment or reflection? Oh, all from the studio audience, okay. Yatpada pankacha palasha vilasa bhaktya karmashrayam gratitam udkratayanti santa tadvanna riktamatayo yatayo pirudha shroto ganast tamaranam vajavasudevam. This is a verse from the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which is mentioned that the devotees of the Lord are able to overcome the strong waves of material desire. And actually it comes like waves. You notice that near the ocean, where we live in California, there's places along the coast where sometimes this happens. Newlywed couple, they'll go to the coast to see the beautiful ocean. And they go up on the near the edge of the ocean, and they're watching how beautiful it is. And then what's called a sleeper wave comes. Sleeper wave means a big wave that's not supposed to be there. It just suddenly comes out of order, and it jumps way up on the land, and it grabs the newlywed couple and drags them off into the ocean, never to be seen again. What a blissful scene that is. Such a tragedy, actually. And this is the power of the material nature. At any moment, the strong waves of material desire could drag someone away. So the verse that you mentioned says that yogis, they're riktamatayo, because they're devoid of thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They don't have that. Therefore, they have nothing to hold on to when those strong waves come. They'll be washed away by the strong waves. But the devotees, yatpada pankacha balasa vilasya bhakta, they are relishing the nectar that comes from the tips of the lotus feet of the Lord, from His shining nails. It indicates that they're intimately acquainted with His pastimes, with the fragrance of the Lord, with all the sense attractions that come with worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So they can easily withstand these waves. There's a good example given in the Bhagavatam, and that is that a huge elephant cannot withstand the power of the waves of the ocean. It'll be washed away. But a tiny fish, because it is surrendered to the water, is surrendered to the ocean, it swims gleefully through the water. So devotees of the Lord, because they surrender to Krishna and they accept Him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they can swim within the waters of the material world without being affected. Whereas big yogis, they're so strong, they can control their senses, they're smashed by these waves that come. So the main qualification for perfection is surrender. If one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and simply accepts, you are the Supreme, I am your servant, then one becomes saved from so much trouble, from the onslaught of material existence.
Hare Krishna. I was really surprised to hear the point when you mentioned that the holy name also has the same features of the Lord, that makes it more accessible with our tongue. And because sometimes it's very difficult to sit and meditate, but I can constantly say the names of God and experience the same features.
Yes, actually, there's an analogy given. I heard when I was in South India about that people are searching for God. Say, please show me God. It's like searching for water. This analogy is searching for water. So someone's very thirsty. They said, I need water, please give me water. And someone says, oh, there's water in that cloud over there. You get it from the cloud. So this is like God is in Vaikuntha. You say, yeah, but I don't know where Vaikuntha is. It's so far away, I can't even reach it. So then someone was like, give me water. And he'd say, water's in the ground. I said, but I have to dig a well. And I have to get a bucket and put it down there. How am I going to get all this stuff? I can never dig a hole. And this is like the yogis. The yogis, they have to sit for 10,000 years and meditate, drill a hole in their heart so they can see the Paramatma. And then sometimes people say, well, the different avatars of the Lord appear in the world. And then this is compared to flash floods. A flash flood happens when there's a huge rainstorm somewhere. And then the water accumulates and it comes in an unexpected place, it comes washing down. And in order to be there, you have to have judged where it's going to happen. How can you predict and arrange to be in that particular place at that time to take advantage of that water? So the avatars appear in the world, they're like these flash floods. You can't calculate how to appear at the same time as the avatar. And then he says, but this guru, the personal guru and the holy name, they're like water in the palm of your hand. You just drink it. And so this process that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave is so merciful because he's teaching how to approach the Vaishnava. First he teaches that to Sanatana Goswami. He said, this is where you get it, from the Vaishnava. And also from the holy name. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes on to talk about the holy name in his Sharanagati. The last verse describes how by his chanting, he describes all the symptoms. And if you read these symptoms, you'll become intrigued that I have to experience this. It is his Krishna Bolbe Jabe Pulakahave Jorbi Anki Politai. We sing in one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs. If you go on chanting Hare Krishna, your hair will stand on end, tears will come from your eyes, And he describes other symptoms in the Sharanagati. He said, I'm devastated. I'm experiencing devastation in my whole body. I'm practically paralyzed. The holy name's taking away all my senses. I'm like crazy. And then he says, and then the holy name comes and takes me by the hand and leads me directly back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the spiritual world and introduces me to my own rasa. So this is actually very powerful evidence of for simply sticking to the process that one's been given by one's spiritual master in order to discover one's rasa. Because there's a lot of different opinions about, like, you have to stop doing Vaidhi Bhakti, start doing Raganuga at a certain point and make this adjustment, that adjustment. The main adjustment one has to make is to surrender completely to the chanting of the holy names. And the holy name will come and personally take you by the hand and introduce you to your relationship with Krishna. Because it's interesting that Krishna and his name are not different, but the holy name, Rupa Goswami says, Vacham Vachakam Ityudeti Bhavato, that there's a difference between the holy name and Krishna in that the holy name of Krishna is more merciful than Krishna himself. Because although Krishna is there, the holy name comes and takes us by the hand and introduces us to Krishna, even though he's non-different. That's how merciful the holy name. And not only that, the holy name will go to places nobody else will go. Holy name could go down into the hellish planets, which is right downtown here in Charlotte. Same thing. And you go down, chant the holy name, and people who are condemned to go and sit in a stupid cubicle for 20 hours every day and do some work, and they're thinking, when's Gaur Nitai going to come and save me from this? And then the devotees come down and they chant Hare Krishna, and they go, that's it. Gaur Nitai came and saved me. The holy name comes right in the office. It goes inside the corridor, and they hear it, and they go, that's it. It's the spiritual world, and they're saved. So the holy name, Rupa Goswami says, Nikila Shruti Mali Ratnamala Duti Nirajita Pada Pankajanta Aimukta Kalera Pasyamanam Paritastam Harinama Samshayami. That the great souls surrender there. Those who know anything about anything, they know that you have to surrender to the holy name. And if you do that, everything is available. All the Vedas are available. All yogic perfection is available. Everything. It's all there, complete in the holy name.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, so wonderful. You glorified devotees as the precursor to seeing Krishna, isn't it?
Yes.
So, I came across reference, but I want to get explained by you that reference in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, where Prabhupada quoted Bhagavad Gita Hara Ananya Cheta, because in our Krishna consciousness, our dealing with the devotee is so critical because of the offenses and different things. That reference I want to your grace to explain. Bhagavad Gita Hara Ananya Cheta, Rishamalino Pi Virajate Manushya, Nahi Shashvat Shashi Kalar Shashi Shadi Kadachit Divid Para Bhavatam Upaiti Chandra. That the rays of the power of the rays of the moon is not diminished by the so-called mark of rays in the moon. Devotees means those who have unflinching faith in the lotus feet of the Lord.
Yeah. This verse, that what you're quoting comes from the verse Apichet Sudaracharo Vajate Mamanyam Ananyabhak Sadhur Eva Samantabhya Samyak Vyavastos, if I'm not incorrect. Yes. So this is Krishna's strong statement in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where he's describing bhakti. Bhakti is there in the middle of the Gita, because it's like in a jeweled box. The jewel's right in the middle of the box. And here he's glorifying his devotees. And he's saying that even if a devotee is seen to have worldly tendencies, if he is properly situated in his determination, that is, he has the knowledge and intense desire to surrender to Krishna. Even if he can't do it perfectly, Krishna says this person is to be considered sadhu. And he states it emphatically that you must consider sadhu. Because in the next verse he says, Shri Prambhavati Dharmatma Shashvat Chanti Nagachati Konteya Pratijani Nami Bhakti Pranashati. Somebody so situated will definitely come to the perfectional stage. And so it's important, as you're mentioning, to cultivate a knowledge of the Vaishnava Tattva. You have to understand what are Vaishnavas. And the residents of Kulina Gram, they asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 1 year after the next, what is a Vaishnava? And the first year, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, a Vaishnava is anyone who says Hare Krishna. Can you all say Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so then he said, Mahaprabhu said, anyone who says Hare Krishna, that person is the best among the whole population, because they can just say it. They're not ordinary. And there are many verses to describe that, but because of time, I'm not going to go into it. Then the next year he said, one who's constantly chanting Hare Krishna is a Vaishnava. And then the next year he said, one who, upon seeing that person, others start chanting Hare Krishna. That's the Vaishnava. And those are different levels of Vaishnavas, the Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttam Vaishnava. But a Vaishnava is a Vaishnava. And the lowest consideration is what people have done in their past. Then a higher consideration is that you discard the past and you say, what are you doing at present? How are you doing now? But the highest consideration is, what's your potential for the future? So the Vaishnavas, they're so open-hearted and uncritical because they see the potential of everybody. And if someone could just say Hare Krishna one time, they think, this person is the best of all the people in the whole world. Because they understand, first of all, the potency of the holy name, and second of all, the qualification of somebody who can say Hare Krishna, as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Aho bata shra pachato gariyanya jiva gre vartate namatu byam te pustapaste juhubu sasna arya brahmana chunama granati ete. This is Devahuti speaking to Piladeva, said how wonderful it is that someone who can say Hare Krishna even once with the tip of their tongue has surpassed all the Vedic rituals, all the austerities, going to holy places, all these kinds of things. The person actually becomes qualified to be a Brahminical priest and perform sacrifices because they can say the holy name. So this we should take into consideration, and there's a whole way of life through which one organizes one's mind and senses and the living environment so that one can accommodate Vaishnavas and avoid criticizing them. And if one lives like that and chants Hare Krishna, one will advance very quickly. If you succumb to criticizing Vaishnavas, or you listen to others, tolerate others criticizing Vaishnavas, and stick around for it, then your power to chant the holy name will be diminished. And your power to appreciate Vaishnavas will be diminished also. So we live in a culture that's called Vaishnavism for a reason, because we worship Vaishnavas. And Krishna himself says to Uddhava in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Mad Bhakta Puja Vyadika, better than worshipping me is worshipping the Vaishnava. So one cannot neglect this order and advance in devotional service. One has to learn how to worship the Vaishnavas properly, and properly is the key term. That's also mentioned in the 5th verse of the Nectar of Instruction, Krishneti Yasigiritam Sadriyata, etc. And there, Rupa Goswami is describing the different ways in which to relate to various levels of Vaishnavas. But one must do that to advance in devotional service.
Amazing presentation about the future potential that one is.
Yeah, that's the vision of Sankirtan also. The devotees are going on Sankirtan. They don't, like yesterday we went out here in Charlotte, we met these homeless people sitting there. I mean, we met so many people, and it's so heartfelt to offer them Krishna literature, because you just see this homeless condition, or this whatever condition people are in, it's just a very temporary thing. And Prabhupada said it's like when water freezes, it's an unnatural condition. But nobody thinks like it's there permanently, it has to be ice forever. All you need is a little heat, and the next thing it's water again, and it goes back to its original state. So devotees see like this because they know from their own experience and from the amazing descriptions in Shastra, how powerful Krishna consciousness is. And everywhere, that's why people become addicted to Sankirtan, to going out and giving it to others, because they know it works. When you know it works, then you become excited about giving it out. When you know medicine is potent, then you want to give it to everybody. You can't stop giving it out. You start stockpiling it and giving it to thousands of people. So we have to see the future potential in people in order to become excited about Sankirtan. Like the Smarta Brahmins, they think nobody can become qualified. Or there's other people, even within our recent, there are offshoots, like unbona fide offshoots of Krishna consciousness, in which people say, everyone's permanently unqualified except for Prabhupada. There is no such thing in the Shastra. It's complete nonsense. Everywhere, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that if you take to the chanting of Hare Krishna, step by step, you'll come to the Paramahamsa stage. And Prabhupada said it too. And if you can't, what is the use of the process? It has no use. So the Smarta Brahmins and the modern day people who say these kinds of things are all in the same boat. And this is restricting the holy name and the power of the holy name, which Shukadeva Goswami definitely does not do. He says, Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pukasha Abhira Shumva Yavanaka Sarya Yene Chapapira Pashaya Shaya Shudyanti Tasmai Prabhu Vishnavi Namaha. And that is that Lord Vishnu is so powerful. When his potency comes through his devotees, it can bring up the lowest people to the highest stage of devotional service without doubt. That's what our real acharyas say. And that's what Sankirtan means, believing those acharyas and giving the medicine to as many people as possible. Om Tat Sat. Thank you. I thank everybody here in North Carolina. You're in one of the most important states in the entire country, nay, in the entire world. And what you're doing here strategically is so important. This is a southern state, isn't it? Even though it says North Carolina, it's a southern state. And we have to conquer the South, no doubt about it. So we have a stronghold here. There's devotees holding up here in the war against Maya. We have to come together and really make a strong surge into North Carolina, take over this whole state for Krishna. And this will be a great victory for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And even if you die trying, you'll go back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande Hari Haribo. Panchakapadurvishcha Kripasanabhevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavi.
Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, hey! Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman, Nachariyar Marman.